you might find very interesting opportunities with these stately homes, depending on their geographical location. Those that are located, let's say, up to an hour from a big city might do very well as sources of income, as business opportunities.
Welcome to Global Real Estate Insider, a podcast where we share tips and strategies to help international homebuyers and investors. Whether you're looking for a new home abroad or an agent eager to expand your reach, this podcast is the ultimate guide to navigating global real estate markets. Here's your host, Nick Marr.
Welcome to the Global Real Estate Insider and our podcast. Great to have you here, Bogna Gładon-Obodzińska. Have I said that correctly?
Absolutely,
Excellent.
Yes. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Right. You're actually our first real estate agent that's going to be on the show. And I particularly look forward to having a chat with you because we have spoken in the past and you revealed some real hidden gems about Poland. So I'm hoping that people that are listening to us right now are going to be as amazed as I was about the market and your actual experience. What's the agency that you work for?
It's a small agency called Castellan Estate. It's a boutique agency, you can say. I run it with my partner. I own the company. We sometimes employ agents if we need to, but basically we work together and just collaborate with experts in various fields of real estate, surveyors, appraisers, lawyers, notaries, etc., etc.
Right. A bit about me. I've been running homesgofast.com since 2002 and another platform which is high-end property, europeanproperty.com, since 1999. So I've obviously met a lot of people in that time. And I love connecting people, across the world with real estate and, realizing their dreams. What about you? What drives you? How come you're an estate agent or a real estate agent in Poland?
Well, it was a long journey. My first career is in philosophical aesthetics and art history. I have been lecturing for a long time at universities about the perception, about the aesthetic experience, also the environmental experience and ways in which we interact with where we live, with what we do from the perspective of well-being and connecting both with other people in these spaces and with the spaces themselves. Therefore, the interest was there always, and also part of that interest was in heritage and how we preserve our heritage, what makes our heritage both tangible and intangible. And therefore, real estate just integrated both of these fields. And when I decided to try living more active life than contemplative life and stepped out onto the realm of business while doing research still, because I'm partly involved with research as well, but that the real estate was such a natural field to do that it just happened. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds very interesting, and especially around the sort of the historic side of things. I mean, can you give our listeners, a little bit of a history lesson around Polish real estate?
Actually, the name of my company, Castellan, it may seem connected to the Spanish language, but it's not. It actually comes from Latin Castellan in Polish, who was the first office of the real estate agent for the king. We had that office, a person who looked after all the properties of the king in the old times from 15th century onwards here in Poland. And that figure was responsible for acquisition, sales, and also management of properties. So that gives you the scope of time where this role sort of reaches back. And that period of Poland from 15th century onwards was actually the best for Poland. We were a big, rich country where a lot of estates were built, where a lot of cities were created and developed. And then, of course, the turbulences of the partition of Poland, where we just disappeared from the maps for over 100 years, was a gap. And then the 20th century, we know, was a very tragic moment for our history, also including the infrastructure, both residential, factories, all kinds of infrastructure. So, in fact, it would have been after the Second World War when we started rebuilding those infrastructures, but it wasn't, because communism also froze that moment for a while. And it's been the last 20 years when Poland's real estate really took off. So it's still on the rise. And in all fields of real estate, of the market, there are still lots of opportunities for investors.
There was something that when we spoke last, you spoke about stately homes and sort of very grand properties. Tell me a little bit about those in the Polish real estate sector.
This also is related very closely to the structure of the society, because until the 20th century, basically, we were a monarchy. And a monarchy that was based on small estates. I said societal structure, but also economical structure, because those estates were actually, I could compare them to modern day big companies or corporations even, because each of those estates employed lots of people. Each of those estates had a little factory or manufacture of some or food processing, manufacturing, or timber or other things. They had resources that they cultivated. So they were basically usually a similar size, between 100 hectares. Some of them were much bigger, some of them were smaller. So in fact, all of the terrain of Poland can be defined on the maps with those estates. It was a division, the administrative division, we can say, that originated in the 15th century and lasted through the 19th century. If you travel through Poland, you can see the remnants of them whenever you see a park in the middle of fields. And that park, you can be absolutely sure, contains a beautiful stately home, bigger or smaller, sometimes a palace, sometimes just a home. And they are all usually very beautiful and usually in a very poorly state. They need a lot of care and TLC to bring them back to their original and usefulness. Because during the communist times, they were somewhat neglected. The state had taken them over from the original owners, and they didn't care for them the way such homes should have been cared for.
With the sort of former stately homes, then, is that an opportunity really for foreign buyers or not? Is that something that people could look at?
I think so. It depends on your goals. If your goal is mainly generating income, you might find very interesting opportunities with these stately homes, depending on their geographical location. Those that are located, let's say, up to an hour from a big city might do very well as sources of income, as business opportunities, because lots of companies would be hiring them for their conferences, events, trainings, retreats, etc., etc. And such a distance is probably a perfect one, because you can keep people in one place for a while to work together without them going back into the city, but they are not too far away. Also, those that are located in resort areas at the seaside, in the mountains, in some picturesque landscapes, especially in the southwest of Poland. Those might be bigger. Sometimes they are castles, sometimes they are big palaces, and those, I think, really offer great opportunity, because you can turn them into a 4-star hotels with hundreds of rooms, with swimming pools, gyms, spas, etc., all kind of infrastructure that might benefit the users. Those that are
Yeah.
smaller and more remote are more suited, I would say, for private residencies. If you'd like to have a beautiful home to raise your children, surrounded by history and surrounded by the local culture, then I would recommend those.
Do you have sort of listed building status? You know, like talking from a UK perspective, there are certain things that you're not allowed to do with historical buildings. You have to get permission to maybe, change the internal structure of the building or the windows, those type of things. So we have these listed buildings. Is that the same in Poland?
So we do have listed buildings. We don't have categories like those you have in the UK with A, B, and
Yeah.
C category of listed building. We have two types of listed buildings. Ones that are listed by the local authorities, let's say a county,
Mm-hmm.
and those that are listed in national registries. And in fact, the status of a listed building that's protected by the conservation officer only regards those that are listed in the national registry. And those, yes, you need
Right.
to ask for permission about the materials you need to use, about the type of techniques you need to use for the restoration, etc., etc. So that's pretty similar. But not all of those historic buildings are listed. In fact, only some of them.
What is the current property market like in Poland from your perspective?
It's dynamic. It's very dynamic.
Okay.
I have been observing it closely for the last 8 years, and there have been big changes. We were on a very steep rise with prices for real estate until the 22, when the war started behind our eastern border, and that affected all of Europe with prices for energy, for materials, etc., etc., and that caused the interest rates to raise in Poland, which has reversed the market at the moment. So we had the sellers market for a long time. Now we have the buyers
Mm-hmm.
market. There are still lots of properties on the market. People do list them, but
Yeah.
there is much less demand. Therefore, you can really pick and choose.
Okay. So we've got a buyer's market right at today's date in October 2024. Okay. Interesting.
Correct.
So what areas would you recommend foreign buyers to go to, or from a foreign buyer's perspective, looking at Poland, how would you approach the market if you were a foreign buyer?
Again, I would say it very much depends on your goal. Whether you're looking for residential properties or for business investment, or you're a company who would like to move their base to Poland. I think this kind of market, the commercial market, poses lots and lots of opportunities because land is still much cheaper than in Western Europe. A lot of it still is agricultural, but designed for development, for turning into commercial land. And you can negotiate zoning permissions. At the moment, we have a new law since last year that allows investors to collaborate with the local government toward the redevelopment of land. We also have a special law that allows we call it revitalizing of post-industrial lands. That is done especially in the south, in our mining region, where a lot of old mines were shut down, and now all those terrains are ready for redevelopment for very interesting projects, from residential housing, buildings and estates to industrial uses, to parks and recreation areas as well, sports centers, etc., etc. There's really a lot to choose from. And then, of course, the cities. I didn't talk about listed buildings within cities in our old towns, but there are lots of opportunities there as well. They are usually tenement buildings with apartments to lease. And what is a novelty on the Polish market is PRSs. So more and more companies are entering this sector of the real estate here, to start leasing within the institutional lease format. And this is something that I think may be the biggest opportunity right now, because some few Poles can afford to get a loan and a mortgage
Mhm.
loan to buy themselves a property. It also concerns apartments. So lots of people are interested in renting properties.
So, what types of properties are most in demand at the moment, just generally in your region?
So I will give you a concrete answer to this general question by just choosing one
Okay.
segment of the market.
Yeah.
So because of the changes, because people can't afford to buy apartments, houses, and residences for themselves, as I mentioned, the rental market is very hot at the moment. So investors who might want to build an apartment building to let to private users, that could be a very good opportunity. And I think also there is still a great hunger for houses in Poland, because we were forced for the last 70 years to live in blocks of apartment buildings that were substandard when it comes to the square footage of each apartment. That was the poor communist way of providing living spaces, and we are still trying to get out of that as a society. And the hunger for living in a house on the outskirts of a big city with your own piece of garden where your kids can play with your dog, and then even commuting is fine with us, but that dream is still there. So there are a lot of developers who just specialize in that kind of building, and that can't be too big, but it's bigger than apartments, and they can be affordable for an average consumer in Poland. And I think that's an interesting segment of the market to consider.
What is the sort of the general process with buying and selling in Poland? Who pays fees? Do the buyers pay the estate agent a fee, or how does it all work?
Well, until 2014, the agencies had to be registered and licensed. After 2014, this segment has been deregularized. So now there are many different formats of how agencies work. And there
Mhm.
are agencies that charge both parties of the transaction. They have a commission from the seller, and they also charge a fee to the buyer. I represent a group of over 4,000 agents around Poland. We have an association in which we promote the what we call representational format or method of working, which basically means that we only represent one side of each transaction. So if I'm representing the seller pays my commission, and I can show each property either to private people who just come to for the viewings, or agents with their clients. So I collaborate with other agents in this kind of format of work. And then there are those agencies, but there are very few of them, who only charge the buyer for their costs, for their fees. I don't collaborate a lot with them, but that's how it works. When it comes to the costs of a transaction, if you're a buyer, you will be paying the cost of the notary. You will be paying a tax. If you're a private person buying a residential home, you will be paying a 2% tax that the state takes for the procedure, and a few other small costs, but that's the main cost. The seller usually doesn't pay anything on the cost of transaction. If you're a company, you will pay the VAT instead of the 2% tax.
Is there any particular trend at the moment with people from a certain region that like to buy, overseas buyers maybe? Have you noticed, is there a particular nationality that's attracted to Poland, for example?
Well, yes. One more thing in response to your previous question.
Yeah.
All EU citizens can buy any kind of property in Poland.
Okay, that's interesting.
Foreigners who are from outside of the EU can only buy an apartment, basically, without any permissions. If you want to buy land, which means like a house built on a land, then you need a permission from the ministry that's responsible for that, and that lasts about a year to get a year or 18 months. So if you're from outside of the EU, you need to take that into account that it may last a little. You have to prepare your process. Responding to your second question, after 2020, when the war started in Ukraine, the Ukrainians have become our biggest investor in Poland, because a lot of Ukrainians came to Poland seeking shelter. And at first they were mostly renting, but then a lot of them decided to start their businesses, or they sought work and they stayed in Poland, and they really invest into purchases of residential properties mostly, but not only. They also have moved a lot of their business here. So also commercial investments are popular among the Ukrainians. But then there are also a lot of Middle Eastern investors in Poland, especially in resorts in the mountains, for example. There are towns that are famously popular among Middle Eastern investors. There was a period when a lot of Russian investors came to Poland. That's less so nowadays. And obviously, our neighbors from Czech Republic, from Germany. Another new sector of the real estate market here in Poland that wasn't so popular before is senior housing. And that's apartment buildings with facilities for care. It's a whole range from full day and night care homes to just daycare homes to independent apartments where seniors might just prefer to live because there would be a doctor on the premises, etc. So that's an interesting market too.
Yeah, and that sort of retirement village or a retirement accommodation is definitely going to be on the growth as we get aging populations. Very interesting. So is there any particular areas in Poland that are attractive or emerging, or that maybe someone should consider looking at if they're researching Poland?
Yes, I would say so. There are obviously the big cities that most foreign investors have heard about, that others have been investing heavily in it, which is the capital Warsaw, then the biggest port in Gdańsk in the north at the Baltic Sea, and then Kraków. Kraków is mostly interesting for tourist investments, for tourist apartments. But then I would encourage investors to look at smaller cities and cities more to the west, and those even more to the east, although with the war going on behind our eastern border, those have become a little less interesting to investors. But the ones in the west, especially Poznań, Wrocław, Szczecin, Łódź is a city that's about an hour away from Warsaw, the capital. It's very well connected by highways and trains, and there are lots of people who commute from Łódź to Warsaw, and the prices there have been on a very steep rise for the last 2 years, and I'm sure they will be still, because they are still more or less half of the prices you can get in Warsaw, and the city is becoming more and more popular. So you can really make a killing if you invest in Łódź now. And then there
Interesting.
are those much smaller towns that are under 100,000 that we call them like a little ring around big cities, where people also are relocating because real estate is cheaper than in the big cities, but they are close enough to commute to the big city. Therefore,
Yeah.
those may also have good returns on investment.
What are your sort of tips about the market? How should someone approach it? Is there some general advice that the listeners here thinking, do you know what, I might invest in Poland? What's your sort of your top tips?
I think Poland is super interesting to Western investors because Poland is one of the safest places in Europe. When it comes to safety in cities, we don't have, for example, a phenomenon well known here in the US where, sorry, I'm saying here in the US, I happen to be here at the moment, but we don't have bad districts, for example. We don't have dangerous areas. Obviously, after
Mm-hmm.
dark, anyone can become a victim of pickpocketing or something like that, but it's really rare in Poland. And it's a very nice place to live simply. The cities have grown immensely over the last 30 years. So you will find lots of very new infrastructure from the subway through the roads, through just the redecoration of interiors. You will find that
Mm-hmm.
our hotels are very new. Um, it's a very convenient place to live in Poland, actually, at the moment, and all those things I think make it interesting for people just to live and to run their families. You have schools, you have shops, you have shopping centers, etc. Everything is at a walking distance in many of the cities.
Yeah.
Mm, it's very green, and climate is very agreeable. We have somewhat severe winters by comparison to, for example, Italy, but then our summers aren't that severe. It's still hot. We get 3 months of 30 degrees every summer, but it's not 40. So I would say those are all very good conditions for you to consider investing in Poland. If I was to give you a warning, just to be a bit more objective and not just advertise my country,
Yeah. Okay.
you may be careful with flips because a lot of apartments have been redecorated, and I'm saying redecorated on purpose as opposed to refurbished or renovated thoroughly,
Mm-hmm.
by people who do this as a business. And some of them do it very thoroughly and they truly renovate, including all the plumbing and electricity infrastructure and so on. Others just
Yeah.
barely redecorate and sell it on. And you need to be careful to have somebody who is an expert to check that for you, the technical conditions, if you're buying on the secondary market. If you're buying from
Mm-hmm.
developers, you need to also check for quality. There are a lot of laws that protect the buyer, and some developers are more interested in quality, some are more interested in quantity of their sales. So you need to
Yeah.
be careful checking for the quality as well. But I think otherwise it's a pretty straightforward market, and there aren't many traps when it comes
Okay.
to
And what?
buying.
And generally, what about language barriers? Do most people speak English, Polish, or how does it work? What's the feel?
I think that English is becoming more and more known and used in Poland. Obviously, it's our second language. We learn at school, and the younger generations are more at ease using it. They have traveled more. They have learned it from watching television in English. The older generations may struggle a little because during communist times there weren't many opportunities to learn foreign languages, but I think that nowadays those generations have mostly retired, so you may find a lot of people being able to communicate in English better, or maybe less with less easiness, but that would be possible.
All right. Is anything else that you should mention to people that are listening to this show now with interest, with your expertise? Is anything else that we should know?
I will tell you one thing that's maybe I find this interesting from the theoretical point of view. In Poland,
Yeah.
real estate is defined by law as a surface of land. So if you are buying a property in Poland, what you are actually buying is a piece of land or shares
Mm-hmm.
in a piece of land, in case of an apartment that has shares in a piece of land that's under the apartment building.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have problems like those in England, for example, with a property that isn't really fully owned by the owner
Yeah. So
because of
sort of
the
different. Yeah, the difference
yeah,
between sort of freehold and leasehold
exactly.
here, UK
Leasehold.
at
We
least.
don't have
Yeah.
that. If you're buying your property, you really are buying the freehold, and you really are investing in a property, and then it's yours. And that's something that also defines us Poles after so many years of communism, where when nobody really owned anything, that we really
Mm.
like to own land, and we
Yeah.
like to own property to feel that we truly belong. And if you do that in Poland, I think that's going to affect you, because we have this mindset about really being landowners to some degree, bigger or smaller the land, but we like
Mhm.
to own land.
Okay, from the conversation, I still feel that the listed buildings, the sort of like the big manor homes in Poland, sound really exciting because I can imagine they're historic and grand buildings. I wonder where they're located in Poland. Is that something you would help people with?
Very gladly. I am located in Warsaw, so I mostly work around Mazovia, which is a big region in the center of Poland, mostly
Mm.
lowlands. And that region, that district of Poland, is covered by a network of these stately homes. A lot of them are for sale. They
Hmm.
usually come with between 3 and 10 hectares of land. Usually it would be a park, and
Okay.
our parks around those stately homes are not in the French style. They are all in the British style, the English style of the 1800s and 1700s, developed by the sentimental style of setting them. So they are very natural. They have beautiful canopy of big trees, often oaks, and so they would be everywhere basically. Every 5 kilometers you can find one.
What sort of money are we speaking here? What would someone pay for a historic building?
It depends on its state. If it has already been renovated by someone who knew what they were doing and they did it thoroughly, it would be probably around, depending on the size of the property, but the cheapest ones might cost maybe £2 million. The bigger ones may cost with more land, and those that have been especially turned into commercial, yes, infrastructures, maybe hotels, conference centers, etc., or sport
Yeah.
centers. Those may be more expensive, 4 million, £5 million. Those that are in a very poorly state and need a lot of investment to renovate them, they may be very cheap. They may be several £100,000,
Okay.
maybe. The cheapest ones I have seen sold maybe even down to £100,000.
Wow. And obviously probably needs a lot of work to do it to make it
Yeah, you need a million.
habitable.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
you might need a million
And also,
pounds to then make it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'd imagine quite expensive to maintain once you've got there, but very interesting niche around the stately homes and listed buildings, and all comes with land, and it's historic. I think it's a pretty attractive proposition, especially as it sounds like it's fairly low cost. Just from my point of view, it sounds really, really interesting. It's almost like I'd love to see some pictures of them, some of these places. But no, okay, a really interesting exploring Poland's real estate market with you, Bogna. We're going to wind up now. I think we've spoken for a few moments. That's good. Yeah, nearly 40 minutes. And it's been good. So you've been listening to the Global Real Estate Insider with Bogna Gładon-Obodzińska, who is from Castilian Estate in Poland. And really appreciate you coming to the show and sharing your expertise with us. And I'm sure we'll speak again.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to hearing more of your podcasts.
Thanks for tuning in to the Global Real Estate Investor Podcast. If you're a buyer or investor, be sure to visit our platforms, homesgofast.com and europeanproperty.com. You'll find thousands of properties for sale and investment opportunities listed by agents, developers, and private owners. Whether you're looking for a second home, a luxury estate, or a profitable investment, we have something for you on our platforms. Don't miss out. Check out homesgofast.com and europeanproperty.com today. And remember, stay tuned for more insights and expert advice on global real estate.